down a deep hole isn't getting me anything but give me an unskilled labor force too. So you're right. You can make the points going either way.
I'm just saying, and yours is right. That's what November is for, right? But in truth, we know economics is a science, like medicine is a science, which is often means that it's very much educated guesswork. But I do think that this is a very important piece of our evolution in this field. If we're gonna have a different kind of debate, I do want to go to the current for a few minutes because I don't want to. And again, not asking you to give away, administration strategy, unless you want to, of course. That is fine, but how do you see the big picture as this year progresses in terms of the budget gap? What are your hopes for the May revision? And then we know we will have a significant gap remaining. How do we close it and get beyond this?
In terms of the size of the problem, we started with a problem definition of $19.9 billion. The solutions that you've adopted to date reduce that problem by 1.3. So at this point, our best number is 18.6. A substantial portion of the governor's proposal was federal funds. We included the governor's budget included $6.9 billion in additional federal funds. Substantial progress has been made on a number of those different items. Many remain under consideration by the administration or Congress. There's things moving on different bills that amount to anything between $3 to $4 billion. Action needs to happen on that, and again, the governor will be relooking at the federal picture in the context of the May revision. On the economic side of the equation, we've looked at there's been some positive information in terms of positive data on unemployment, as well as revenues are coming in higher than projections. At the same time, when we look at the scope of the losses that we've had over the last year, the gains are much smaller than the losses have been. On the revenue side, even though in our latest bulletin we're about $2 billion above projections, it's too early to tell whether that is a real revenue gain or whether it's a difference in timing. So, for example, the taxpayers pay a greater portion of taxes in December based on the federal tax calendar versus are we going to be seeing a higher amount of refunds going out in April, making that revenue gain not be as a full revenue gain. We're relooking at the economy, relooking at cash. Lots of the critical information for the May revision we won't have until the beginning of May. So there's some litigation that continues to be underway that we are confident will prevail on, but if depending on how that goes in the court, that could have additional budgetary impact. Bottom line, the budget deficit for the coming year will be very substantial, and the out-year projections are also pretty substantial in terms of the ongoing the projections for the ongoing deficit, and it will require very difficult policy choices, very difficult reductions, very difficult solutions for you and for the governor to consider to be able to bring our budget back into balance. We don't have a new updated number other than to say 19.9 based on those projections is now 18.6. We will have updated information on caseload and on revenues, as well as in other factors by the May revision.
And the updated, just to be clear, by the May revise, the updated estimate will include what we're likely to receive from the federal government, as well as the more definitive information about tax receipts to see if this $2 billion, maybe more, maybe 3, maybe 4, actually is a gain as opposed to an accounting.
Yeah, I mean, the problem side of the equation will basically include updated caseload information and updated revenue information, as well as changes in law that impact that problem definition. If the federal government has passed the additional, so things like, for example, the $680 million associated with the additional federal funding to compensate the state for costs that the state paid for providing prescription drug benefits to Medicare beneficiaries. That's something that would be included in the problem definition because it's already happened. Any additional federal funds that remain in the May revision, that's all going to be based on what the governor proposes to close the gap as defined. So our updated numbers will include what has happened as well as updated proposals by the governor to close the projected gap, whatever size we projected it at that time.
You come from the Health and Human Services world, and you have seen what has occurred to the safety net over the last several years. In your view, how should we approach funding issues surrounding the safety net?
I think there's been a lot of very difficult reductions across the budget, as well as other very difficult budget solutions. I think lots of different program and service eliminations that I know have been very difficult for you to do. Things like elimination of the adult dental benefit in Medicaid, reductions to SSI grants, and a whole host of very difficult reductions. We will give you the best information that we've got, the options for closing the budget gap, exactly where the reductions are made, where changes are made. That's a policy decision for the legislature and for the governor to make. We'll give you the best info we've got on different choices as well as the scope of the problem.
Furloughs. The Senate Office of Oversight and Outcomes has produced a series of reports which in sum total, I'll paraphrase, say that for tax-generating agencies like the Franchise Tax Board or the Board of Equalization, that the furloughs are actually costing the state general fund money because the payroll savings are offset 10 times or more by the inability to be more aggressive in collecting tax dollars that are due the taxpayers in the state of California. Have you, has the department, done any analysis of its own on the cost-benefit impact of furloughs as it applies to tax-generating agencies?
The department has done such analysis, and it's included in the governor's budget. Has the department looked at the whether or not those agencies have been compromised in actually collecting tax dollars that are owed the state as a result of the furloughs? The budget reflects the savings associated across the budget with what was created, designed, and implemented as an emergency program to achieve savings across the workforce. It also reflects a revenue impact associated with the furloughs in revenue generating entities. That is included in the governor's revenue forecast. I'm not sure that I don't believe that analysis was actually ever done by finance, or at least there was certainly no rebuttal done to the Office of Oversight report that actually looked at the reduced capacity of those agencies to go seek the tax dollars. Just my point of view. Realignment and reform. Another one of these issues that we talk about every year, as this is the year that we're going to change what's broken about the system, and every year we deal with the urgency of the moment and the emergency, and we scramble and eventually get it done, and then that discussion about change is put off another year. What's your view of realignment specifically? When I speak about realignment, I mean changing the relationship between state, local government, and school districts. And what is the remedy or set of remedies to help stabilize our fiscal situation here at the state and at the local level? In terms of realignment, I think it's helpful to hear specifically what you mean by realignment, because I think one of the challenge, and to talk about your focus or interest as it relates to schools, because I think, as I think about realignment, I think it's important for policymakers to first define, what is it that they're trying to accomplish? Is the goal a fiscal one, a programmatic one, or both? How much control is the state willing to have local government have relative to service delivery, relative to variability in services across the state? And depending on the goals and depending on, who's best suited to do a particular job and who and what level of government is more appropriately handling that task, as well as the policy determinations relative to statewide-ness and all those different pieces kind of drive the type of realignment policy that the state adopts.
Well, I know that we collect the money. We don't collect enough money, and we're not therefore able to pass down sufficient money to the school districts and or to the local government, specifically the counties, for them to meet their need and their demand. And so maybe I'll ask the question this way. Do you have an opinion as to what might be the best areas of government to propose for a realignment with the purpose of providing quality services, but without the state essentially holding the sword over the school districts and local governments to determine what they are able to provide and what they're not able to provide?
I don't have a particular opinion because, in part because in my mind, it depends on what policy goal you want to accomplish. What areas are you more comfortable with local government providing that service versus state government providing that service? How much control do you want the local governments to have or the state government to have in defining the scope of the program, the scope of the services, and that in turn, as well as relevant impacts of federal law, as well as state constitutional and state statutory requirements. So, for example, if you think about a variety of programs in health and human services, how does the overall federal requirements for statewide-ness associated with federal funding for foster care impact how you think about realignment? Well, in some areas you have to take, and what do those federal constraints mean relative to how much local control versus state control there needs to be? Once there's a policy decision, where we at Finance are happy to provide information relative to federal implications, state constitutional implications, and different options and questions for you to think about in this area.
I'll just one last editorial comment, and then we'll call up the witnesses. But I know that the administration has put in a lot of time and thought on issues related, for example, to rainy day fund, and many of us supported that in the context of last year's budget discussion. The administration has certainly spent some time looking at the issues of tax reform. I would hope that in the remaining months of this administration that the administration would be willing to venture into trying to untangle the very tangled government structures that we have here in California. I mean, you talk to most experts, and they will tell you that the fundamental problem is, whether you agree with 13 or not, 31 years, 32 years after the passage of that landmark law, landmark proposition, that the entity that collects the money doesn't provide the service, and the entity that provides the service can't collect the money. And I would love in the remaining months here, if the governor I know is interested in going out on a high note, that would be something that the administration and the Department of Finance would actually be proactive and take some leadership on. That's my request. Let's take Senator Dutton.
Just something earlier about revenue, because something that we were discussing earlier, and I think it's important, because I know when I first came here, my perception of what revenue meant is different than reality. And so right now, what is our total obligation on dollars that have been transferred from special funds to the general? Because even though we may show a little bit of increase in tax revenue, we still got an imbalance due to transfers and loans that have taken place from special funds.
In order to, I need to double back to make sure I give you the right number, but we have a substantial number of different obligations. The LAO has noted them in their publications. We have, economic recovery bonds that are outstanding. I believe there's about $8.7 billion of those. There's $2 billion in Proposition 1A borrowing that is due to be repaid to local government in 1213. There's additional budgetary obligations associated with education. There's additional budgetary obligations associated with repayments to special funds. I can give you a full accounting, but there's...
Make sure you distinguish the difference between, because I'm not as concerned about bond money that's used to build hard infrastructure, but I am concerned about dollars that we've borrowed from special funds for program that were unrelated to those funds, and therefore creating shortage in programs that the funds were intended for. So, because I think it's important when we look at revenues to understand that it isn't just tax revenue we're talking about. We're also talking about, you define revenue as also being transfers and borrowed money as revenue as well, and it's not just all tax revenue. So there is a difference in how we should be looking at spending that kind of money, at least in my opinion.
All right, let's hear from the witnesses. First of all, witnesses in support of the nominee. They're all silently in support back there. I know you got a lot of your friends and supporters back there. Are there witnesses in opposition? Okay. Well, I don't see any of them back there. So, moved by Senator Onestad. Senator Cedillo, anything you want to add to the mix here?
Well, this is only one question. And we're still the 8th largest economy of the world. Maybe some thoughts about where we can get revenue. We shut off some revenue streams, vehicle license fee, a few others. They've cost us a lot of money. I mean, it's astonishing that we're $60 billion less, still trying to operate. Looking at the economy, looking at the diversity of our economy, areas where we may want to seek revenue for the state's budget.
Well, the governor's budget includes a variety of different revenue proposals, including alternative speed enforcement, including we're still working on the sale of Ed Fund. We're looking. It includes some fees, the transportation. Swap was a substantial general fund solution. So there are some revenue proposals included there. Also, the revenue increases enacted by the legislature and the governor last year remain in effect through the balance, through most of them remain in effect through the 10-11 fiscal year.
Any other ongoing that you would suggest?
If you have options that you want us to provide you information on, we're happy to do that in terms of any additional options. The particular solutions, the governor or you would look at them, and we're happy to give you costing information of any policy option that you'd like us to take a look at and get you info on.
Obviously I share the respect that everyone has for your work and appreciate your professionalism and amazed at your capacity. These are challenging times for all of us, and we all appreciate your forthrightness and your competency.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Rapaces, sure.
And if I could just, again, add an observation, this is another strong female appointment by this governor. I want to acknowledge that.
Latina.
And the
Why
fact
is
that she's a Latina is even a bonus.
Why is
So,
Absolutely. I want to pick up on Gil's comment a moment. Amazing capacity. I think that's when people talk about Ana Manasantos. Is just incredible depth and ability. We all recognize that and appreciate it, and know that you also do your job with integrity. Having said that, I'm looking forward to confirming you, and then wrestling with you and the administration over the next number of months to come to a necessary solution, but a fair solution to this budget. And you're in a tough spot, and you're in a tough spot sitting here today as we're trying to create a conversation about some of the options here. But there's no question you're the best person for this job in a difficult time.
Just one more. It was actually kind of towards Senator Zedillo's point there too. When you take a look at part of your operations and stuff, there's obviously areas of efficiency that we can take a look at where we don't have to take away services necessarily, but we can actually look at doing things in a different way that could actually save money. And therefore prevent us from having to take away the benefit from the actual recipient. So I'm assuming in some of these functions, when you take a look at this, you also, in addition to take a look at revenue enhancement opportunities, you're also taking a look at expenditure reductions other than taking it away from the people, but from operational efficiencies. That's at least. Yeah.
Absolutely. A lot of what the governor has asked us to do in development of this and previous budgets is looking at what are options that he has and that you have to deliver services in a more efficient manner, to target services, and to look at preserving core activities while making reductions and achieving savings, and we'll continue to work on that.
Very good. Any closing comments?
Just thank you very much for your time, your consideration, and your kind comments. I appreciate it a lot.
Welcome. Please call the roll.
Senators Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Aye. Dutton, aye. Oropesa? Oropesa, aye. Honested? Honested, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
That's 5-0, which is unanimous, of course. That will go out to the floor. And congratulations. Yeah, let's take 10 minutes, if that's all right. Thank you. Stacey A. Aldrich, who is the governor's nominee as the state librarian for California.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to you. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine. Thank you.
Once again, I'd like to give you the opportunity to introduce any family member or special guest who's with you today.
Thank you very much. My husband, Patrick Aldridge, is here with me today, and I have a few good friends and colleagues, Kim Bowie Burton, who's the president of the California Library Association and the librarian at Monterey, Holly Masalas, who's the executive director of the California Library Association, and her daughter, Sam. This is her first hearing.
I think if I might suggest, if you want to slow down just a little bit, because...
I'm sorry.
And a little louder.
Closer into the mic.
Yeah, just
okay.
move the
Can I
mic
go this?
closer to you.
There we go.
Every word
Sorry.
is being
Little nervous.
transcribed for history here. So
Oh, thank you.
it'll be, it'll be in a library someday.
That's true.
There you go.
Okay. It's another way of thinking about it.
Go ahead.
Mike and Christina Dillon, and I'm grateful to have staff here from the State Library and my parents who are in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania today.
Wonderful, wonderful. So a brief opening statement, if you might, and then we will ask some questions.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm honored to have been appointed by Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger and to be considered by the Senate for the confirmation for the California State Librarian. I'm grateful for the opportunity to not only care for one of the oldest cultural institutions. I'm sorry. Okay. I am grateful for the opportunity to not only care for one of the oldest cultural institutions in California, 160 years old this year, but to be a positive contributor to building the future of the State Library and libraries statewide. With over 20 years of library experience, I bring not only a deep commitment to preserving and making sure our cultural memories and information are accessible today and for future generations, but an eye on building the information and service structures needed to meet the ever-changing needs of our California communities. The California State Library has amazing collections and services, information services, library development, unbiased research, and important programs like the California Civil Liberties Public Education Program. We will work to ensure that there is increased access and awareness via a new virtual portal to enable better discovery and connections to these resources. I envision a student researching California Gold Rush to not only find the original map drawn by James Wilson Marshall when he first found gold in Sacramento in 1848, but fluid connections to photographs, diaries, and other information that creates pictures and provides context for the time period. This is just one example of how the new portal will make our resources more accessible. This important leadership role also works closely with the California library community to develop local and statewide services that support the access, information, education, literacy, workforce development, and life-of-the-mind needs of the people we serve every day. There are two areas I will focus on immediately: broadband connectivity and resource sharing. Over 60% of public libraries in California are the only source of free internet connectivity in their community. Broadband connectivity is a core service of libraries, enabling people to complete school assignments, apply for jobs, secure government services, communicate with family and friends, and participate as digital citizens. We will continue to work with statewide partners to ensure that public libraries have ongoing connectivity needed to support their patrons. Technology continues to change how we access, find, use, and evaluate information. Our current state models for resource sharing are in need of an upgrade to address these changes. We will work with all the stakeholders to develop new models for resource sharing statewide to ensure that all Californians have access to the resources they need regardless of where they live in California. I'm excited by all the opportunities we have to continue to build and support a great state of libraries. And lastly, as a good librarian will do, I'd like to share with you what I'm reading right now. I'm currently reading Queen Victoria Demon Hunter by A.E. Morat, and this book is overdue, How Librarians and Cybrarians Can Save Us All by Marilyn Johnson as an ebook. I truly appreciate your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sorry I spoke so fast.
And we noticed the new device that you are
Yes.
reading off of.
It's an iPad. It's the
That's
new
what
iPad.
we know. Look at that.
Very lovely. We're looking at all of these new resources. 10 minutes. I was there early, and there was not a big line. So, but it's an amazing tool.
It actually does beg, the question, the main question that I have on my mind as we think about libraries in the year 2010. With technology, are we going to see freestanding libraries with columns and rows of books over the decades ahead, or are we going to have virtual libraries by virtue of our iPads or Kindles?
I think it's going to be a mixture of both. Libraries are transforming in the way that they're serving their communities. As information changes in format, the spaces are changing to serve different needs. So a lot of libraries now, you do see less books. Libraries are letting go of reference materials. There used to be rows and rows of reference books where you could pick up a world book. All of that's available online. So they're removing those shelves and putting in more computers, or they're removing those shelves and putting in more spaces for family centers where families can get together and play and learn and create literacy. So I think the spaces are changing. There might be archives where you go to see what the actual books look like, but currently not everything is online. So until we have everything available, I think we'll still have those spaces. So I think there's a little bit of time that we'll actually have the shelves.
Did you say, or pick it up from the background material, that your total budget for books and periodicals for the California State Library is $350,000?
It was about a little over $300,000 for just materials. So we use that for databases and for serials and continuations. So that's just keeping up what we have. So we haven't had funding to buy new volumes of
so
books.
what have we done to you here? In terms of in terms of the library and the budget. I mean, I know my notes here have a couple of references that you get. You provide Braille, cassette, and digital talking magazines to over 12,000 Californians. You get 300 calls per day.
Okay.
Is there a backlog? Are you able to help everybody who needs the assistance? You once did a pretty renowned and successful adult literacy program teaching adults to read. What has happened to that program? What has been the impact and the magnitude of cuts to the state library system?
So those are referencing several different things: collections, staffing, and then programming. On the collection side, if we look at our state budget over the past 3 to 5 years, the budget has been pretty flat, and the cost of actual materials continues to rise. And in order to maintain collections like the digital access for state workers and the legislature to databases, sometimes we've had to make cuts so that we can maintain those databases. So it's been prioritizing the collection. So on the collection side, we haven't been increasing our collection, which is of a concern. We do have an amazing California history collection, but history doesn't stop, and we haven't really been able to collect as many ongoing history materials as we'd like to collect. On the staffing side, there has been a toll over the past year, and it happened over time. We've lost about 22.5 positions. And of those positions, it means we have fewer people to maintain the government publications section, which now used to have 7 librarians, now has 2 librarians, and then several staff members who work with them. But one of our roles is to ensure that there's access to Californian documents, and also we're the federal depository, and we oversee other sub-depositories within the state, and it's become harder for us to do that. With the Braille and Talking Book Library, yes, that has affected our staffing as well. We have fewer staff to take the calls. Again, the average age of the people we serve at the Braille and Talking Book is 71, and their preferred style of communication is by phone and interaction. So it used to take us a couple of days to get back with people. Now it's taking a little bit longer, and it is a little bit of a concern because we are transitioning from analog books to digital talking books. So they're 2 different machines and 2 different types of cassettes that the folks that we serve have to learn how to use. And so we have 12,000 machines we have to get out, and we had about 3,500 users apply to get the machines immediately, and now we have to convince the rest to move over to the newer product because they will no longer be making the analog books after September, so everything is going to move to the digital. But they'll have to keep both. So that's the staffing. The third is the
Adult literacy.
the programming. And it's an amazing program. It has been cut. It means we serve fewer people, but about 106 libraries in the state of California participate in the program. And for every $1 that the state is putting towards this project, we get about 4 back and leveraged at the community level, which is pretty amazing.
So what have we done, again, what has been the numbers in terms of the programming budget for that, for adult literacy?
I actually have those with me. We're down to about $4 million, I believe, a year.
And you were at where?
And we were, let's see, in 2000 we were at 5.4 million, and we're down to 4.5 million. So, and for literacy, it's such an important program, and especially for libraries. People, it's an access issue. If you're not literate, you can't access the materials that are available to you. That can help you be successful. So literacy is really important. And not just, we're seeing in the literacy programs, the need to, we're partnering and we're working with workforce development because we have a lot of people who have basic low literacy skills now who had jobs that they don't have anymore that have to now do workforce development, and they're doing those kinds of programs within the libraries.
Questions?
Yeah, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Obviously, everything's changing quite a bit, and one of the things that had come to me and we're contacted is that with the changing of the role of the library, obviously we have to make changes internally with regards to the job descriptions and stuff of the personnel within the library system. And there seems to be, at least I'm hearing that there's confusion is trying to find somebody whose job it is to do a particular function. There's been I guess we've actually received some complaints about, being told that it's not their job, but nobody can tell them whose job it is. So, what
From
are
the
you?
library?
That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm asking.
Goodness.
If you are aware of this, how are you?
Now.
How is your internal organization going? Is it is it something you get a hand on, or if somebody does have some complaints about how the operation is, do they contact you direct? Do you
Yes,
have
they
some-
should. Absolutely. We've had some transition recently within the State Library because of the renovation of the Library and Courts building. We've moved our $6 million plus collection, and the way we were previously designed, we had sections. So we had librarians who were law librarians, government documents librarians, general information librarians, and they've all been pushed into one space. And so probably what that person's experience is in our own internal trying to change the way we provide services.
Okay.
And so we're going through a transition right now, and I think that's directly related to that transition of how we serve and who does what and how do we work together to provide the information that people need.
Okay, well, I told them I would bring
I
it to your
apologize
attention.
for that. Yeah, they should definitely contact me because we
we'll do
definitely want
that.
to meet their needs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other members? Senator Peza.
I understand that there are some funds that flow from the state library to local libraries for programs related to homework help. Are you familiar with that? And
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that program and, if you have any numbers on how many participants there are, how many libraries are participating, any information like that?
I believe we've actually been supporting that program with Library Service and Technology Act funding for, Jerry, about 10 years? 10 years? Is it about 10 years? I think it's about 10 years. Jerry is the head of our Library Development and Services Bureau. And the idea was to create sustainability for libraries. So we pay, for the first year, we pay the full amount that it costs to purchase access to an online tutorial program. So they either use tutor.com or BrainFuse, which are the two big companies. And so students can log in from home or at the library and log in directly with a tutor to help them with math, reading. It's very popular. And so we pay for full amount for the first year, and then I believe it goes down to 50% and then 10% or 20% in the third year.
And are the programs In your experience, do they continue beyond that 3-year? I mean, as your funding reduces, are the libraries hanging on to the program? And
They're doing the best they can, but what we're hearing from the field right now is they're doing the best they can, and in most cases they are, but this year we are hearing from people, they're asking if there's a way that we can continue to support them to bridge them because of their funding cuts.
again,
And so
it's
we're
the
considering.
local government cuts, it all trickles.
It's a trickle-down effect. And so we're trying to figure out how we can look at those libraries and figure out how much money can we support. Is there a way that we can do some bridges versus taking on the whole cost as a whole on an ongoing basis?
Is there a way for me to find out where those programs,
Absolutely.
what libraries?
Absolutely.
That
I
would
can
be
get
great.
that to you.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Thanks. Thank you.
Senator Dutton, I know you had an additional question.
Yeah, just a follow-up question, because I was kind of curious. We talked just briefly before the meeting here with regards to creating partnerships and so forth, with like Microsoft, Google, a lot of the Silicon Valley type companies and so forth. And I just wondered if, do you have something you're currently working on, or do you have any future plans that would include bringing them involved into the system or the help?
Absolutely. Right now, we're analyzing the collection. What is it that we have that is unique, and what is it that we're actually trying to do in terms of digitization? We're not just trying to digitize and then make an image accessible. We really want to create some dynamic connections. So we have been talking with Microsoft about their Silverlight product that will enable us to create online books where you can turn the pages, you can add voiceovers that will read the book. If there's music, it will play the music. You can add music to it. So we have been talking with them about Silverlight, and we're basically looking at developing our plan for digitization. We haven't had a plan for how we were going to attack making all of these resources available electronically. And so as soon as we have a better plan, I'm looking forward to meeting with folks from Google and from other agencies and other companies in Silicon Valley to talk about how we can make our resources really available to people.
Seems to me that would also tie in very nicely, because just now there was exhibits going on outside the Capitol at
Yes.
noontime and stuff, where they're, I believe it was Senator Torlakson, now Assembly Member Torlakson, was helping to put it on concerning the digital divide and closing that with education. It would seem to me that what you're trying to embark on actually could end up being somewhat the prototype for what could actually be accessed throughout the education system to actually help. So I would just certainly like to try to help, but also too, if we could maybe make sure everybody's partnering together in that area, maybe we can come up with something that will actually be beneficial to the education system
Absolutely.
as well.
Before Secretary Thomas left, we were talking about how we could create some curriculum around our collections,
there you go.
and I would love to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Very good. Witnesses in support, please. Welcome.
Let's make sure that I can speak loudly and slowly. I'm Kim Bowie Burton, and Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm so delighted to be here. I am the Library, Museums, and Cultural Arts Director for the City of Monterey, and I've worked with Stacy as a colleague in that capacity, but I'm also currently the elected chair of the California Library Association, representing over 3,000 members from academic, school, public, private, and special libraries across California. And you can tell why we're in support of Stacy. Her answers have been incredibly impressive, and as you can tell, her quickness is also something that we very much appreciate in the library community. For libraries of all kinds across California right now, as other social and public services, it is both the best of times and the worst of times. And you are all in the very difficult position of having to make very difficult decisions that affect all of us, all the way down to the local level. One of the things that the State Library does, and that Stacy will be so good at, is providing that unbiased, accurate information that you and your staff need to make difficult decisions for our future. I would also say, as the director of California's first library, we've been around for 161 years, so we predated the State Library by 1 year, the ability to accurately capture and record and make accessible our state's incredible history not only the history of the past, which is so important, but also the history that we're creating now for the future. And Stacy's work as a futurist is particularly helpful in maintaining those archives, but maintaining them with an eye for the 21st century, because that's what's coming up. I would say, finally, that in terms of the very difficult decisions that we at the local level have to make, the ability of the state librarian to represent California very well on the national level in terms of federal funding, but also in terms of private organizations such as the Gates Foundation. Stacy will be very, very good at that. She's a very strong advocate for our state. I happen to be one of the lucky library directors who participated in one of the online homework help programs. 2 years ago, no, last year, our state funding ran out, and our city was able to pick it up because we were able to provide the value of what that program was. I would say that, unfortunately, for this year coming up, because of budget cuts in my city, we will not be able to continue it. However, our Friends group is looking to pick it up because, again, we've demonstrated the incredible return on that investment. The particular product that we chose not only helps students through college level, but actually helps adults as well and people with literacy training online. So it's been an incredible tool, and it's been an incredible gift. So anyway, we are all very much in support of Stacy as state librarian, and we also really appreciate her continuity that she's provided for the last year for the state library while this position has been considered.
Thank you so much for coming to Sacramento and giving eloquent testimony. Mr. Frost, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members, Jeff Frost, representing the California School Library Association. We're also here in support of Ms. Aldridge's confirmation. Historically, our association has had very strong working relationships with the state librarian. Dr. Kevin Starr, during his tenure, was instrumental in getting a school librarian appointed as a staff member in the Department of Education. That has been an invaluable asset to school districts. From the standpoint of Ms. Aldridge's involvement in technology, broadband, and as to Mr. Dutton's point, the interface with school districts, we are excited about the opportunity to continue to work with her. We think that there are opportunities for collaboration, bringing the private sector in, and moving in some new directions related to technology, literacy, et cetera, that we think will be exciting. So we're happy to be here in support of her nomination. Thank you.
Thank you. Any witnesses in opposition? All right. Thank you. We'll take a motion on. Moved by Senator Cedillo. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
We're all in support here, and thank you for your public service during difficult times.
Thank you.
Please call the roll.
Senator Cedillo? Aye. Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Aye. Dutton, aye. Oropeza? Oropeza, aye. Onnested? Aye. Onnested, aye. Steinberg? Aye. Steinberg, aye.
Great. That's 5-0. That will move to the floor of the Senate, and we'll take it up forthwith.
Thank you very much.
We now have items. Let us take items 4. I want to skip item 6 for just a moment. Are there any other items that are problematic for the members? 13 you want to hold? You want to separate as well? Okay, so let's do then. Solve the cupcake controversy. Let's do 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, please. Moved by Senator Onnested.
Senator Cedillo? Aye. Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Aye. Dutton, aye. Oropeza? Aye. Oropeza, aye. Onnested? Onnested, aye. Steinberg? Aye. Steinberg, aye.
Okay, very good. The reason I wanted to take 6 separately is this has been the great raging debate in California about the Monday start time for the Senate session. And I think I'm especially sensitive, being a Northern California member, to the challenges travel-wise, transportation-wise with Southern California members. So I don't want to impose here. On the other hand, we do have 25 members of the Senate who are on either budget or policy committees that meet on Monday. And so now as the session, picks up, the issue is we don't want to start budget subcommittees and or Monday policy committees too late in the day Monday, because that doesn't necessarily serve the members or the public. And the idea of starting committees in the morning, earlier in the morning or at noon, for example, it might work, but that becomes problematic because oftentimes a chair will be sitting there alone or with one other member. So I'm going to propose the Solomonic compromise here and kind of put this to rest. That we set session for 1 o'clock, okay? Period. End of story. 1 o'clock. All right? Well, we'll discuss the lunch either. And is that all right with people? Okay. So let's do that, and then that's compromise. Yeah. If it doesn't work, we'll be back in this venue.
Yeah, but also too, what can happen is somebody's been on budget, it's going to get affected anyway. If we got it scheduled for a couple of days, there's no point in having the entire body here just because Denise and I need to start early on something, so it's not really an inconvenience to everybody. But the other thing to keep in mind too is the fog situation down in Southern California. We end up having problems starting to come in this year with airport closures, things like that. So we have sometimes a little flight delay. So I think your 1 o'clock is a worthwhile compromise.
Okay. I was dead set about going beyond 12:50, but I decided to go the last 10 minutes.
Give them 12:59
But no more. Okay. Okay, 1 o'clock. Call the roll, please.
Senator Cedillo? Aye. Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Dutton, aye. Oropeza? Oropeza, aye. Onnested? Onnested, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
Good. Thank you all very much. Let's go to the last item, which is 13. I don't know if you need discussion or just call the roll. You wanted to abstain. Moved by Senator Oropeza. Please call the roll.
Senator Cedillo? Aye. Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Oropeza? Oropeza, aye. Onnested? Onnested, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
That measure passes. Okay, that is it for the regular session. We do have a couple of executive session items. And okay, we have to clear the room because we